Hey everyone, I'm Josh Sordelet with Equinix. First question I've got for you guys. Who knows who Equinix is? Wow, way more than I thought. That's awesome. Usually I go to meetings and presentations like this and I get about a third of you know who we are, so I have to spend time explaining who we are. So I'm going to jump right past that. And we're going to talk about a little bit about what both the presenters have talked about before, which is this notion of digital edge and getting your things condensed and aggregated in a way to enable multi-cloud access, to enable SD-WAN aggregation and ease of on-ramp and accessibility for not only your branch offices, but your core assets as well. So the first slide we're going to jump into here, we can just jump to the next one, is kind of a picture of what does this look like. Everything they just talked about, when you think about what does that look like when I'm going to deploy it and I'm bringing it into a multi-cloud format, how does that come together? And that comes together here inside of the orange box that we see. That box represents either a rack inside of an Equinix data center or a virtual rack within an Equinix data center. We talked a little bit about bringing CloudGenix and their services to that platform. What we've done is in certain markets, we've launched x86 that we own and operate, and you bring your licenses for your CloudGenix, for your Palo Alto firewalls, for your virtual routing constructs, and launch those and instantiate them in a region tied to the Cloud Exchange already so that you can, in real time, enable connectivity to express routes, to Amazon Direct Connects, to Google Cloud Partner Interconnects. It enables you to have that common routing domain to hairpin between any one of those destinations. It also includes not just those major cloud destinations, but a number of the SaaS platforms as well, like Dropbox, ServiceNow, Zoom, WebEx, F5 and Encapsula are bringing some of their solutions to market there as well. So it enables you to do not just cloud, but that whole sort of platform that exists outside of cloud. Often we think of cloud purely as IaaS. Cloud is so much more. It's not just the big three that we talk about most frequently. It's also the ServiceNows, the Salesforce, the Dropbox, these other platforms that we connect to. And what we're seeing kind of universally here is how you connect to those platforms is increasingly not through the internet. It's through an interconnection strategy of one form or another, be it direct connectivity, SD-WAN, a hybrid blend of all of them, which is the reality we're all living in right now. If we can jump to the next slide. What we're also seeing, and we spoke really directly about this earlier, is this push to the edge. And as we get closer to the edge and we have more and more devices that are out there that are competing for resources, the reality of all of that is that these devices have conditioned us to the point that slow is the new down. Our users will not use these applications on these devices and platforms if they're too slow. It might as well be down and unavailable. Let's just move on. So what we're seeing is this big push to get to that edge advantage, to get within that 20 millisecond latency circle to then find out what applications and operations need to exist at that edge. What can we bring into hybridized, regionalized cores that sit next to clouds and ingest workloads to and from those clouds? What others can we push to more broader geo cores that represent a North America or a US type core versus an EMEA or an APAC type core, with these models then repeated within each of those geos? Go ahead and jump to the next slide. We just released version 3 of what we call our Global Interconnection Index. This is not an Equinix thing. What we did is we looked at the rate of the growth of interconnection happening inside the four walls of a data center, our own and all of our competitors as well. And what we found was some really astounding things. Right now with the version 3, we're seeing that interconnection, the things that we've all been talking about so far, is growing at 52% faster than the internet. The volume of data that's going to be generated through interconnection by 2022 is figured at 53 zettabytes. That volume of data cannot be handled by MPLS and internet combined. It can with interconnection. So what we've seen surprisingly is that some of these spaces like manufacturing are huge users of interconnection. It really kind of caught us by surprise that we'd see that they'd come in number 4. The top 3 we fully expected. To see manufacturing using a large number of interconnection, they're connecting to network service providers, to business partners, and to cloud service providers. We're seeing this across all industries. We see that wholesale and retail have also shown up that have their own spin on how this stuff works. What we're seeing is that interconnection is a lateral play. It's happening across the verticals, and it's for the same set of reasons. It might be a mixture of percentages of each of these column types,
but it's really still the same ingredients. Can we go ahead and jump to the next slide, please? What we've done is, as a result of that, there's really 5 steps that an organization needs to go through in order to adapt to this digital transformation. The first being network optimization. That's also one of the 2 that never stops. Optimization is a word that has many definitions. We could be optimizing for cost. We could be optimizing for user experience. We could be optimizing for latency. And those 3 things can move cyclically and change around. As we optimized our network, we introduced multi-cloud and those hybrid elements for connecting in and out of cloud and SaaS platforms. Third step is, if we've announced clouds and we're moving our edge outside of our traditional sphere of control, we better secure that perimeter and protect ourselves from any new vectors that we're introducing into our environments. That opens up the distributed data, getting some of those legacy systems of record and those legacy data sets closer to cloud so we can apply new analytics and new tools against those things so that you can begin to monetize some of those legacy assets that you've been trying to figure out, what am I going to do? How am I going to make this useful and beneficial for the next 10 years? Once we get there, you get to that notion of application exchange, which is there you can look at the idea of data lakes and being able to scrub application information, share it broader, and draw deeper insights from peers and other industries. These things are beginning to emerge and take place not only within Equinix, but within data centers as a whole, as a place for enterprises to come and get really usable, answerable information around large sets of users and communities. Can we go ahead and jump to the next slide, please? We're the largest data center provider in the world. We've got 207 facilities now around the world. We just bought 3 in Mexico that aren't on the map, and we just built 1 in Seoul, South Korea that's not on the map yet. What we've done is we've deployed our cloud exchange, our multi-cloud switching fabric in, I think it's 33 metros now. All of those are connected together with dark fiber. You could build a ring that spans the world in real time. That ring that spans the world on our fabric is billed by the day. You could then take the stats from that cloud exchange, dump them into Splunk, and import that to machine learning, and use machine learning to tell the fabric when to build a connection between sites, what bandwidth to use, and when to tear it down. So you could set up a connection between Seattle and DC, minimum commit of 50 meg, see a workload coming, turn the dial to 10 gig, move the workload across, turn the dial back down to 50 meg. Just-in-time networking is becoming a real thing. Next slide, please. What we're also seeing is some of what John's going to talk about is when you do this, there's not only performance benefits and latency reductions and bandwidth increases, there's cost savings to be realized here too. Sometimes as high as 40%. The average we're seeing is around 30-ish. But the reality is there's ways to cost optimize, to performance optimize, to latency optimize that then will help you get to that next step of hybrid multi-cloud, which will then feed the next step and continue moving on your journey. I think I'm trying to keep it quick here. So
You keep on going.
Okay.
Take your time, buddy.
So we're seeing as people move away from MPLS and move to implement SD-WAN technologies, which aren't a wholesale replacement for what you're doing today. It's a piece of a puzzle. And that puzzle includes SD-WAN. It's going to include some of your legacy MPLS. It's going to include new technologies like layer 2 Ethernet private lines. It's going to include dark fiber technologies. It's going to include some legacy good old-fashioned VPN. It just happens. This stuff doesn't change overnight. It's about that journey and that transformation and making the right choices so that you're not painted into a corner that forces you to do things that you don't want to do. That's pretty much all I've got, so I'll turn it over to John now, I think.